Premeds who get the best grades are those that are antisocial in the morning and social at night. And basically, what I mean by that is that they don't talk to anyone in the morning and they do all their work in the morning. And then in the nighttime, they're out hanging out with their friends, relaxing, and recharging for the next day. This allows them to get the best grades possible, the best college experience possible, the best social life possible, and just everything that you would want in a college experience while also getting the grades you need to get into a medical school. So instead of studying late in the library with your friends, late till like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., just trying to get content mashed into your brain and not even enjoying your mornings because you have classes or you're just really tired or no one's actually out doing anything. Try these techniques instead so that you can become one of these pre-meds who is antisocial in the morning and social at night. So, a story I have that relates to this is when I was studying for my analytical chemistry final. And essentially, my friends in my class realized that, like it worked better when we all worked together and tried to study together, or so we thought. And so we decided that we would go to like the first floor of our library one day and just spend all our time there studying. And I think we like met up after lunch or maybe even after we were like close to dinner time. So it was maybe 3, 4, 5 o'clock at that point. And we decided, hey, we're just going to study until it's time for us to leave because we've finished studying for the day. And so we sat in the first floor of our public library, our school library, which was filled to the brim with people. Everyone's there studying for their final, so it was like super loud and chaotic, which is the first mistake that I made. But essentially, it was just so loud and disorienting, and we were like kind of sitting there, kind of working, and then I think at like 5 o'clock, people were like, "Oh, let's go to Bojangles and just get some dinner at our local Bojangles." And so they went off to get some food, and they came back, and other people stayed, and it was just super disorienting and not really helpful in the end. I just remember the whole thing being so loud and really hard to focus and get my studying done for my final. And so I get into the final, and I don't know what that like. It's like one of the last days of finals. Like I'm already a little exhausted because we had spent maybe the last 3, 4 days in a row studying in that evening time, that afternoon period. And I end up getting like an 80 on the final. And like to be fair, it was a really hard final too. So I'm not saying, analytical chemistry, obviously difficult class. Same with like organic chemistry. A lot of these pre-med classes are really difficult. But like the problem was in this like previous exams for this class, like the midterms and stuff, there were 3 exams and I had gotten really, really high grades on all of them. And in all of those exams, I had studied alone. I had done my stuff really efficiently and just gotten my shit done at the beginning of the day instead of waiting till the end of the day to like study and then study with my friends as well. And literally every single person I knew did this to study for the exams, right? I remember my freshman year roommate, he would like obviously go and he'd be in this econ class that he was with some of his other friends, or that's how he made his actual other friends. And he would just sit there and study and study and study. And I remember during final season, my first or second semester, I didn't even see him for the entirety of the finals period because he was out studying with his friends pretty much like 12, 13 hours a day and staying late at night and sleeping over at their place. And in the end, I think he ended up getting an A- in that class because he was so burned out and exhausted by the time it was time to take his exam. And so all that to say is that I've seen so many of my friends go through this exact same problem where they think that A, studying with their friends is a good thing to do, but more importantly, B, they think that studying late into the night or starting like midday after, breakfast, lunch, everything, and then studying into the night is the most effective way of doing stuff. And I realized that through my own experiences and also seeing these other people, experiences as well, I just realized that this is a horrible way to study, and this is the reason we all probably got lower exam scores because we were A, burnt out, and also just B, it doesn't really push anything into your head. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what I've done in the meantime since that point, and also just like what other tips I have for actually getting the most out of your time so that you can also enjoy your social time with your friends instead of being locked in a library together and studying all day. So studying with your friends promotes basically context switching. And that's the idea that if you are doing one task, let's say you're studying for an exam at one time, and then suddenly you see your phone on the table and you see like a notification pop up. So obviously, like if you're a normal person, you are looking at that notification immediately because it's like, oh, it's an exciting, shiny new thing that's appearing in my periphery. And so you look at it and then you're like looking at it, and even if you just look at it and you're saying, "Oh, I got a message from this friend," you go back to your original task and suddenly you're stuck for a few minutes just thinking about the text. Let's say your friend says, "Hey, like I'm planning on getting dinner tonight with some of my other friends. Do you want to join?" You don't even respond to it right away. You don't even open up your phone. You're not wasting any of the time that you're on your phone, much less considering social media apps and other stuff that you get addicted to. Even if you turn off your phone and you come back to your original task of studying, you'll find that you will not be focused for up to like 23 minutes after. And I've seen that stat in some papers and books, is that about 17 to 23 minutes after you switch, like do that context switching, you'll go back to your original task and you'll be unfocused for 23 minutes. Even if it was just as simple as, hey, I looked at the notification right there and I didn't even respond to it, I didn't do anything to it. Now imagine you're with your friends in the middle of the night, or I guess to me, the middle of the night's like 10 p.m. I guess to most people, that's like 2 a.m. But let's say you're in the night, you're studying, you're already tired because you've been up all day, you woke up at like 8, 9, 10, uh, just because you had other commitments at the time. And so you're sitting down, super tired. You probably have your phone out on the table because most people do that. Um, and you're just not really engaged in your task in the first place. But you're looking at your textbook, you're doing a really good job, you're studying, even if you're doing active recall, you're doing Anki cards, you're looking at your Anki cards and you're flipping through them. But at some point, you get this boredom or a brain fog or fatigue, and you're kind of just like glazing over, your eyes are glazing over the content. And what makes it worse is that you're with your friends who are all studying and you're in a pretty crowded area probably. And even if you're not, you're still with people who could distract you. And so these people distract you and you hear someone say, "Oh, like I just saw this on Instagram. Do you guys want to check it out?" And they show you your phone and suddenly, boom, you lost like 20 to 30 minutes of concentration just from looking at that one Instagram post. And then if you have your own phone out on the table and you get a notification, suddenly, boom, you're distracted again. And this is why people who study in the nighttime and also study with their friends, they start off with good intentions and they're focused for like an hour. And then eventually their study session just drags out over hours and hours and hours because they're so unfocused throughout the time because there's so much context switching just happening in that situation. Humans are meant to have just one task at a time where they're productive because they focus on that one task and they get that task done before going on to the next task and the next task and the next task. So if you go sequentially instead of splitting your attention between these like 10 different things, that can really help. And the reason it helps is because you get into what's called like a flow state. So this was coined by some like Hungarian psychologist in his book Flow, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, if you're interested. But he basically just like examined this concept of flow, which is the idea that, and I'm sure you felt this state before too, is when you're so like locked into something and nothing is breaking your focus and you just get so much more work done in a less amount of time. So for me, that often happens like when I'm working on either like research for my lab or even when I'm studying sometimes, I'll just get in such a locked in state. A lot of the times this actually happens when I'm doing like chemistry or physics, studying because it's like just so many practice problems in a row. And so I'm locked in, I'm doing my practice problems, practice problems, practice problems. And I just keep getting stuff done in like such a sequential order and it just feels so good. Like you'll feel amazing. And the problem with this studying late at night when you're tired, studying with your friends too, is that it introduces you to that context switching and then suddenly you're going from um, studying like one full hour at a time to having this interruption one time and then that 1 hour of really focused flow state studying becomes 3 hours of unfocused, relatively unfocused, non-flow state studying that leads you to not get the grades that you want on your exam and also spend more time studying, which is a lose-lose in my opinion. And my last thing is that if you're spending this time with your friends at nighttime studying and studying and studying, do you actually even enjoy your time together? Because to me, I found the most satisfaction hanging out with my friends that were in other circumstances. It was either going to like a club or a bar or even just chilling and hanging out and playing board games together. And all of these situations basically took me away from studying or away from the work I had to do for my academics. And they just put me in this honestly flow state too, where I would be so refreshed and energized. I would never want to even look at my phone, and I would just like lose track of the time over time. Obviously, you've had these experiences, I'm assuming, if you've hung out with some friends, but that is a type of time that's really refreshing, re-energizing, and gets you excited to do the work because you realize you're doing it for other people around you. You're doing it for your friends, you're doing it for your family, you're doing it for those around you, and you're trying to make them proud as well as yourself. And so I ask you again, do you enjoy your time spent together when you're just studying together in this unfocused manner? I personally don't, and I think most of you also really don't. So I just want to give you some more tips on what you can do to actually achieve that flow state, and more importantly, enjoy the time you're spending with your friends, separate from the time you're intensely focused studying, and maybe even start to find some enjoyment in both. By the way, if any of this has resonated with you, I have a paid program in the description. I also have a link to book a free call, a coaching call. If you're a pre-med who's really interested in leveling up and getting out of the grind lifestyle, then I would really recommend either of these programs. But check out the link in the description. Absolutely no pressure to sign up. It could just be my way of helping you even further beyond these videos. But if you're not interested in that, then let's just continue to the rest of the video. Okay, so now to continue on to that big story I had at the beginning about my analytical chemistry final. I remember taking those insights into the summer, and like I did fine in the class. Like I think I ended up with an A, but it had been so close, and honestly, again, I didn't feel good about my performance on the final. That's one thing I want to tell you guys is that even a lot of your friends and people you know will say, "Oh, like why are you complaining? You got such a good grade in the class." And to me, to that, I just say, like, I want to get the best grades on everything. I don't even know half the time what my grade is in a class or like what I'm doing in the class in terms of grades or performance. I really just want to get the best grade possible on every individual assignment or exam. Obviously, that's possible. That's not possible all the time. Like, you don't want to be a perfectionist, blah 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 blah. But you want to be so invested in your success, and I think that's a really important thing. And I don't think you should let people tell you that. But that's a little bit of a side note. Essentially, I didn't feel good about my performance at the end of that class, even though I had gotten an A overall. And so I remember in the summer and then next semester, really, like when I was taking organic chemistry, and that's obviously considered like the hardest class for a lot of pre-meds to get into medical school. I decided that I would never study with my friends, but I did this instead. So I remember my next big exam was like my first midterm for organic chemistry one. This was considered one of like the hardest midterms at my college just because you're entering organic chemistry. It's a little more difficult and you don't really know what the exams are like. And so I remember everyone else that I knew was doing that same thing that I mentioned before. They were studying with their friends, they were studying late into the night. They weren't having any fun for like a week or even 2 weeks before the exam because they were so worried about it. And I decided, hey, like I've had this strategy that's worked in the past sometimes. I've been able to actively study, I've been able to get into that flow state and achieve the results I want. So instead, I'm gonna buck tradition. I'm not gonna like listen to what everyone else is saying. And instead I just decided, hey, let me go and study how I want to study and see what the results are. Right? So I remember I started studying I think like a week before that exam. And studying a week before that exam, I like the first few days, I just done like 1 hour maybe every day, 2 hours, and then I had like maybe one more intense session where I sort of did some more practice problems that were really difficult for me, and also like did a practice exam. In total, that took probably about 10 hours of total study across the whole week. So not even bad at all. I think I might have even started earlier too. So like it was spaced out. Let's just say that it was really spaced out, and it felt really simple, not super like intense on my mind, and I didn't feel like I wanted to die every moment of the day. So I did that, and I remember specifically the night before the exam or the day before the exam, I did one study session in the morning. I think that's actually when I did my practice exam. So I just kind of did like a more chill type of exam. I was just doing my practice exam and then checking my mistakes, and then I called it a day. I had finished at around 12 p.m. or so, like noontime, lunchtime, went to go get lunch, and then afterwards, I just spent the rest of my day relaxing. That's another tip I can give is that if you have friends who are not in the same major as you, that is such a godsend because oftentimes they'll have different exams or different like exam schedules at least. And so they won't always overlap with you. And so you can hang out with other people in the meantime instead of your pre med friends, maybe when 'cause every one of you guys has the same exact exam coming up in a day. But I was studying until noon and then I hung out with my friend. I think like after lunch, maybe we hung out for like 3, 4 hours. And I got back to my room at like 7 or 8 p.m. at night, and I just felt so relaxed and refreshed and energized. I was like, wow, like I feel amazing. Maybe I should go study. But I told myself, I was like, if I study now, like I'm not really gonna remember anything else for the exam. I'll look at it like a little skim in the morning, like my practice exam and some practice questions that I had trouble on, some concepts. But for today, I'm done. I'm just gonna chill and I will not like do anything. In fact, I even decided right before I remember, before going to the actual uh going back to my room rather, I stood with some of my friends, or like I went to go visit my friends who were in the library studying together because I knew that's where they'd be. That's what would be like where they'd be exactly. So I went and studied with them, or like went with them, and I sat for a little bit and they were like, "Oh, like, are you like studying for the exam? How's your studying going?" I was like, "Yeah, like it's going pretty well, like just wrapping some things up and trying to get a good night's sleep tonight." And they all kind of looked at me a little strange and were like, "Oh, we just started studying, or like we've just started our last session of studying even, and we are really tired, but we're gonna push through. We're gonna get to 1 a.m., 2 a.m. probably, and head back." And that's not even including the kids that I know that like studied the entire night and stayed up all night for the exam. But they were all distracted on the exam, and I just remember going to the exam the next day. I done like a little review in the morning just to refresh myself after a good night's sleep. Slept like 8, 9 hours or something, and I go to the exam, take the exam. Week later, find out I got 98. Obviously I'm like ecstatic. I just like feel amazing. Like I didn't study too much. I did better than I had on my analytical chemistry final in the previous semester, and just in general, I had felt good about myself. And this is when I really started to cement in the idea that hey, I know what I'm doing. Like I can study efficiently. Like I don't need to be grinding all moment of every single day. Now the interesting thing is my friends who um, had studied like the all nighters or pulled like really late study sessions, a lot of them also got really high grades. Like, don't even get me wrong. That's the one thing that I think is so damaging about the grind culture is that if you do it and you stick to it for all 4 years you're in college, you're pre-med, you will get good grades. Like, you will be fine. You will get good grades. But at the cost of what, right? They all got like 95s, 96s, even some like 99s, hundreds. And yeah, like in the moment, I'm gonna be honest, it felt a little irritating, like hearing other people like brag about their exam scores and shit. But I remember realizing that hey, like I only studied like 8 to 10 hours for this exam, and I know these guys studied a lot more and they put in a lot more time, and they were just really anxious in general about it. And that's when I realized like hey, like I don't need to actually study this much for an exam. And with those extra hours, let's say I studied like 10 hours, they studied maybe 25, 30 hours for this exam. I had gotten 20 extra hours back that I just used for whatever else I wanted. I think I spent some of that extra time doing research and working in my lab. I had hung out with friends and I had just like enjoyed my time more in college in that little amount of time. And I had gotten more done in my extracurriculars than a lot of my friends did who were studying really, really intensely for that exam. And so ever since that moment is when I realized, hey, I need to not follow the conventional study advice that just says to grind, 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 um, and put in more time to get a good grade. I had to follow the advice that worked for me, or like the techniques that worked for me, and realize that, hey, I know exactly what I'm doing, and I know what I'm doing works. It worked on one of the hardest exams I've ever taken up to that point. And so let me just keep on spamming this technique into the future, and I'll be able to achieve the best grades possible and have the most fun. Okay, so here's what I want you to do instead. Basically, if you've gathered from the rest of my stories, is that you want to start in the morning or in the early afternoon or between classes with your studying. And so for me, for that oral exam, I would like get up super early. I think I'd get up around actually like normally I'd get up around like 7 or 8 a.m., right? Which I guess isn't super early, but I would get up around that time and I would sit down and immediately I'd start studying. So that could even be for just an hour or even 30 minutes or 2 hours, however long you have before classes. I think I had like a 10 a.m. that semester. So I woke up at 8, I got myself ready real quick, and then I sat down, studied for an hour, And most people, I think, would consider that hour right before class. Like if you wake up at 8 a.m., you get yourself ready. By that point, it's like 8:30 to 9 a.m. By the time you're ready, I think most people consider that time between to be kind of useless, right? It's just like right before. It's like maybe I'll just go get breakfast, or I'll just like hang out and chill and like read or do something on my phone. And to me, that wasn't the best way to use my time because I knew exactly, again, like I wanted to enjoy my social time in the nighttime with my friends. So instead, I decided that I would just use that hour of time and study for the exam, even if it wasn't like the best way. Like ideally, you're working like continuously for 2 to 3 hours and you just get your entire study session done. But I did that 1 hour at a time. So use those little blocks of time you have, especially early in the day. So if you have a block right before your class, use it. If you have like a 45-minute block or hour long block between classes, use that time. Use the time like maybe you eat your lunch a little faster and you just use that time right before or right after lunch to get a little more studying. And so use that time, but use it like super intensely. And if you're intense focused about studying, you're using good techniques like active recall, spaced repetition, etc. You're gonna be able to focus your time in like focus your studying in such a little amount of time and really achieve the results that you want to achieve. Okay, so now you're done studying. Another tip I had that really helped me out during these times, and something I've kept for a really long time too, is the idea that you want to set an alarm when your workday is finished. So I remember going on my phone one day and I was like, you know what? Let me just set an alarm for 5 p.m. and see if I can get my work done by then. And just by having that alarm there and in like the back of my mind, knowing that it would ring at 5 p.m. and my commitment that I'd say I'm not doing any work after 5 p.m. was so like invigorating. Like it made me so motivated to do my work. And so I remember setting that alarm and then afterwards, like I think I finished all my work by 11 or 12 p.m., 11 a.m. or 12 p.m. So like around lunchtime. And I ate lunch and I was like, oh my God, like I just finished everything I wanted to in that short amount of time. And now I don't even know what I'm supposed to do. And so I remember like again that afternoon I just went and sat outside with my friend and we were all talking and just hanging out. And that was so refreshing. And I think a lot of the thing was just having that alarm at whatever time makes sense for you, but definitely like before you would normally go, like a few hours before you'd normally go to sleep. Um, and just using that alarm as a guidepost that, hey, I want to finish my work day by this time, and I will do whatever it takes to make that happen. And you know what? Sometimes tasks will go over. If it's not something that's due immediately tomorrow, I'll just let that task go over and push it into the next day and spend the rest of my time enjoying, relaxing, and figuring out what I want to do with my social time. That way, you're prioritizing your social time instead of just leaving it to the wayside when you have an exam or some other busy period of your life. And lastly, if you're with your friends or you see your friends in the library, sometimes you just want to go and say hey to them or hang out with them. Again, I don't actually recommend studying with them, but if you're going to go there, maybe do some other work while you're there, maybe do a little bit of review. The biggest technique I actually have for making the most of your study group time, if you can call it that, is the Feynman technique, which is the idea that you use that time to teach a concept to someone else in the group. So at this point, if you're going to these study groups, you've already studied for the day or you've already finished a lot of your studying. And so go with your friends. If you want to go hang out with them, fine. Like I'm not going to stop you. It's your life, whatever you want to do. But use the Feynman technique and act like a teacher to these kids or to these other students that you're studying with. And suddenly you'll realize that, hey, A, you'll get like a super nice benefit out of being there. B, you'll help someone else in your group. And C, like you won't get super distracted if you're actually actively like teaching something. And so I remember in that in other exams or other instances, I had used this technique and I like realized like, hey, I just stopped by my friends like study groups. And I was hanging out with them because I just wanted a little bit of social time. Maybe my other friends were busy at the time or something. And I just sat there with them and someone was like, "Oh, how does this reaction mechanism work for?" I don't know. Honestly, it's been so long since I've taken these exams, but whatever reaction mechanism it is, they're like, "Oh, how does this like hydroboration oxidation reaction mechanism work or something?" And I remember going up to like a whiteboard that we had in our library and just like writing down the reaction mechanism and sort of explaining in my own terms how exactly the like stereochemistry and everything worked for this. And by doing that, I remember the next time I like taken an exam question on that, it was just, or like a homework problem or something, it was just so easy to recognize like what was going on and like visualize it in my head because I had spent the time teaching it. I helped that person too, and they were able to better understand that mechanism too. And so to me, that's a win-win. That's like the way you want to use study groups if you're going to use study groups. Again, not my favorite tool just to use study groups in general, but if you're going to use study groups, use the Feynman technique and teach it to other people so that you're able to internalize like the mechanisms, the workings in your own head and create a really strong mental model. Because if you can teach it to someone, then that means that you know the content so, so well. And more importantly, at the end of all of this, take your time and relax. Like, don't spend all your time studying. And that is the final tip I really want to leave you guys with is that you should not like take that extra time that you have, that extra social time or time that's reserved for social time use and just like use it to study more or use it to do more work or use it to scroll on your phone or social media or whatnot. Use it for healthy activities. To me, that was going to the gym. I was able to stay a lot more consistent on the gym once I started implementing these techniques. And it also meant hanging out with friends and making plans and walking around campus and just having fun, like seeing random people that I knew or just hanging out or like going to dinner, doing fun stuff that's analog, that's active, that's in the real world, ideally with friends, ideally with someone you love and care about, was the biggest hack I had to make myself like 10x more productive. And getting even my grades up was just being so focused on the relaxation and restfulness and recharging that helps you attack your next day and next day and next day with so much vigor. Because at the end of the day, college is not about one like intense sprint in the morning or sorry, like one intense sprint over like the course of a week and then you just burn out and crash for the rest of your semester. It's about staying consistent every single day. And if you're able to maintain a baseline level of consistency, then you'll achieve really good results and just be a lot happier and more fulfilled. And you'll get that college experience that I think a lot of pre-meds crave because all they hear is, oh, you got to study and sacrifice and sacrifice. And I think with this, like you can get the best of both worlds and you can have the results you want, the amazing results that you want, while also just being able to spend time with people you care about. And that's really important to me. And just lastly, to handle some objections that I hear about this idea that I have, just from explaining it to other people, a lot of people say that they can't keep themselves accountable without their friends. I guess like being in a study group with your friends at night um, really helps you stay accountable. It really helps you push into those long hours. And to those like claims, I say, first of all, don't be setting long hours. I think I've already reiterated that a million times in this video and in other videos on my channel. But more importantly, like you're an adult now, you're in college, like you should be accountable for yourself because these are your grades. Like, okay, you get a C on this exam and then suddenly you're close to failing your oral class. Like that should be enough of a motivator to you that you realize like, hey, I want to get into med school. I want to get into best med schools possible. And I know I need the best grades possible to do that. So if you really can't keep yourself accountable for whatever reason, like suck it up, make yourself accountable in the first place to yourself. But if not, like just give your friend $5 and say that if you don't study or get this work done, that you'll give them $5. And I think to me that's much more effective than just being like, oh, I'm gonna rely on my friends to keep me accountable. Another objection I hear is that people often feel lonely and like they don't have enough time with their friends. And again, I think that my solutions in this video will really help you achieve that balance where you're not really lonely because you have so much time to spend with your friends. But essentially, instead of relying on your study groups or your classes to make friends and to be not lonely, spend that extra time that you get from studying or from not studying in the middle or in the night, in the evening, to hang out with friends, to go to different events and make new friends in different circumstances. I think some of the coolest like friends and experiences I've had were those that A weren't even in my major or in my pre-med track, and B I just like met at some spontaneous event that I decided to go to, and maybe they were a friend of a friend or just some random person that I kind of recognized and said hey to. And to me, that was a way better way of not being lonely, and it just created more randomness and opportunity. And I think that's like the biggest thing that really helps college students achieve that memorable experience is that you have so many different types of experiences and opportunities and stuff instead of just having like the same experience with like the same study group, same friends over and over again. And so I think having that variety really helps achieve like the type of goals that you're looking after And so if you say you're going to be lonely without your study group, then suck it up. Really just go make like friends through other circumstances. Make your studying so much more efficient and then spend that extra time studying with your friends. And then lastly, I hear that a lot of people say they need to rely on like their smart friend or other people in the group to answer the questions. And again, I say BS to that. Like you have so many tools now, especially. I remember when I was starting pre-med, like ChatGPT and stuff wasn't really efficient. Google was like kind of hard to use for like math problems, chemistry, like advanced chemistry topics, or like just advanced topics in general. And so like just ask AI something if you have questions. I remember when I was taking my like physics 2 class, like my last semester in college, I was using ChatGPT sometimes just to like really conceptualize and visualize or better understand topics that I wasn't really confident about. Stuff like the electric field and like how the electric field is conceptualized and like voltage and stuff. And I would just throw that into ChatGPT, ask it to summarize it for me. I wouldn't ask it to actually do my problems, of course, because that's not helpful to you. But I would ask it for help on understanding concepts, and that's a way better way, I think, than asking a friend who probably doesn't even know themselves how to conceptualize it. Um, but again, if you start using ChatGPT and Google and stuff to really get into that mode of like understanding content really quickly, then you can be the one to teach your friends with actual understood like material, and then you get the benefits of the Feynman technique and everything else as well. So I think that's a better alternative than like this idea that you need to study with your friends or that you need to be working with your friends so late, because you can get a lot of this information super quickly now because of the rise of AI and other like computer tools like that. My final takeaway is that you need to protect your mornings and those little blocks of time between your classes for studying and getting work done, and spend the rest of your evenings and night times hanging out with friends, creating those memorable experiences that make college really fulfilling and really enjoyable to be in, and are part of the reason that you should enjoy college. I think instead of doing these random study groups that you have with your friends and only being able to hang out with your friends really in that way because you're so busy, make yourself more efficient, get your stuff done as soon as possible, and then spend the rest of your evenings creating those spontaneous, fun, vibrant experiences that really add to that college life. And I think you'll have a much better time in college because of it. And so, again, the best pre-meds are antisocial in the morning and social at night. And if that message resonated with you, then please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you're interested. I'd love to hear your feedback on this concept or if you have other ideas for this. And yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.